All right, so today we're going to be looking into a really, really heavy situation. Imagine being held captive for 20 years.
Wow.
It's hard to
Yeah.
even imagine, right? But that's exactly what a 32-year-old man in Connecticut had to endure until he managed to escape. And get this, his escape involves setting his own room on fire.
Oh my gosh.
We're working with a CBS News article here, and I got to say, this story is just wild. It leaves you with more questions than answers, really.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, where do we even begin with this? I mean,
Bro,
1 year's in captivity, that's almost an entire lifetime.
I know. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? And to resort to setting a fire to escape, that just shows you the level of desperation. He must have felt like he had absolutely no other options.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And the article doesn't hold back.
Mm.
They describe him as being emaciated when they pulled him from the burning room.
Oh God.
And the first words out of his mouth, I wanted my freedom.
Wow. Talk about chilling, right?
I know, it really gets to you.
And you have to think about the long-term effects of something like this, too. 20 years of starvation, that doesn't just affect your body, it does a number on your mind as well.
That's true.
We could be talking about cognitive impairments, emotional problems, maybe even damage to his organs. It's really horrifying to think about.
It is, and it gets even worse. The police are saying this wasn't just about being held captive. They're talking about evidence of abuse, neglect, just inhumane treatment stretching back over those 2 decades.
In 20 years.
20 years, yeah. And they're also saying he hasn't seen a doctor or a dentist in all that time.
It's heartbreaking, to
Yeah,
think about the developmental stages he had to go through in those conditions, to be denied basic needs and care during those critical periods of growth, both physically and mentally. It's almost impossible to grasp the extent of the trauma he must have endured.
absolutely. And now the stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, is facing a whole slew of charges: assault, kidnapping, unlawful restraint, cruelty, reckless endangerment. It goes on and on.
It's a long list.
But here's where things get really complicated. Sullivan's lawyer is denying everything.
Really?
Yeah, everything.
Okay, so now we've got a situation where we have the victim's account, we have what the police are saying, and then we have this complete denial from the accused. This is where things get murky.
Exactly. And her lawyer is claiming that Sullivan was providing for this man's needs, that he wasn't locked up, and that she's totally bewildered by these accusations. He even said he's still trying to gather information and isn't even sure if anyone else was living in the house.
That's interesting. I wonder, if there were other people living there, could they have known what was going on? And if so, what role did they play? It makes you think about the responsibility of bystanders in a situation like this. It's a huge question.
That's a really good point. And then on top of that, you have the prosecutor, who was basically saying, no, this man was definitely locked in that room. And when he was taken to the hospital, he weighed only 68 pounds. The prosecutor even compared his condition to that of an Auschwitz survivor.
Gosh, that's a powerful statement. It makes you wonder, what exactly is the prosecutor trying to say with that comparison? Is it just about the physical emaciation, or is there something more there?
I mean, it's like we're looking at two completely separate realities here.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It
Yeah.
really makes you think, how could something like this happen for so long?
Yeah.
And nobody noticed, especially in a regular neighborhood like this. It's not like it was happening in some remote, isolated place. Have you ever thought about that? Like how these things can just slip under the radar, right, in our
Yeah.
own communities?
All the time. This wasn't, like I said, some isolated place. This was a neighborhood probably with neighbors and mail carriers and delivery people and all sorts of folks coming and going. So it makes you wonder, what failed here? You know what I mean? How did nobody notice any red flags for all those
The
years?
scary thought, right? That someone could be trapped like that, and we just don't even realize it's happening. It really makes you question, are we really paying attention?
You know, I think this case really forces us to look at our ideas about safety and community. We like to think that abuse happens somewhere else, not in our own backyard. You know what I mean? But this story really shatters that illusion. It shows us just how possible it is for someone to be suffering right next door to us, and we just have no clue.
Yeah, and the article doesn't even really say much about the neighborhood or if they tried to talk to any of the neighbors.
Hmm.
But it definitely gets you thinking, could anyone have known? And if they did, why didn't they say anything?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And that's why it's so important to talk about bystander intervention. We need to encourage people, empower people to feel like they can report something if they think something's wrong, even if it's uncomfortable or they feel awkward about it. We have to get over that.
You're right. You're right. We can't just sit back and be passive about this.
Yeah.
If something feels off, I mean, we have a responsibility to do something, you know, at least try.
Absolutely. And it's not just about calling the police or whatever, it's about just being more aware of the people around us, checking in on our neighbors, just offering support if we think somebody's struggling. It can be that simple.
I think that's a great point. Okay, but let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about this man's incredible act of defiance. I mean, think about it. He endures 20 years of captivity and abuse and still manages to find the will to fight for his freedom.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
I know, it's like superhuman almost, isn't it? It just shows you the strength of the human spirit. To choose survival, to choose freedom, even when things are that bad, it's incredible.
It really is. It makes you wonder, what kept him going all those years? Where did he find that hope to keep fighting?
That's a tough one. I mean, we can only guess, right? Maybe it was a tiny bit of hope for a better future, maybe just a refusal to give up, or maybe it was just that basic instinct to survive, whatever it was. It's powerful.
It is. It really shows that even in the darkest situations, there's still that human will to survive, to break free. It's inspiring.
Absolutely. It's not just a physical escape, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
his spirit triumphed over all that hardship. It's a story that should make all of us stop and think about what real strength and resilience look like.
So we've got this horrifying story of abuse and captivity, these conflicting stories, and then this amazing display of resilience. So where do we go from here? What are the big questions we need to be thinking about?
Well, for me, the most important question is, how do we prevent this from happening again? What can we do to find and stop hidden abuse more effectively?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the system failed this man. He suffered for 20 years, and it seems like nobody did anything. How do we fix that?
Well, it's a complex problem, right? It needs a complex solution. We need to look at our support systems, our community resources, our ways of reporting abuse. Are they good enough? Are they working? Can people actually access them? All these things.
It's like we always say, see something, say something.
Yeah.
But then a case like this happens, and it makes you wonder, are we really ready to actually do that?
Yeah, it's one thing to say it, right? But then when you're actually faced with a situation, it can be a lot harder. You get scared, you're not sure what to do. Maybe people around you are acting like nothing's wrong. It's complicated. We need to find ways to help people get past that hesitation and feel like they can actually speak up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we also need to, learn about the signs of abuse, how to spot them.
Yeah.
Because it's not always obvious. Sometimes it's subtle. But if we can learn to recognize those red flags, it can make a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about seeing it in the victims. It's also about recognizing the behaviors of abusers. Like, what are the patterns, the warning signs? What makes someone capable of doing something like this?
That's a scary thought, but I think it's something we need to talk about. We can't just wait until something happens and then react. We need to be proactive about preventing abuse in the first place.
Exactly. It's a whole different way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
We need to be more aware, more vigilant, more willing to question our own assumptions about the people around us.
Yeah, I think this case really shows us the dark side of human nature. It's hard to believe that this kind of cruelty can exist, even in a normal community.
It is, but at the same time, it also shows how strong the human spirit can be, This man's story proves that. He endured so much and never gave up hope. That's incredible.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think it comes down to this. Never underestimate the power of just paying attention and taking action. Every single one of us has a part to play in making the world a safer, more compassionate place. If we pay attention, educate ourselves, and have the courage to speak up, we can actually make a difference.
So listeners, here's something to think about. Look around your own community. Do you see any signs that someone might be struggling, suffering in silence? What can you do, starting today, to be more aware, more supportive, more proactive in preventing abuse?
Yeah, let this case be a wake-up call for all of us. A reminder that even when things seem really dark, there's always hope. And there's always something we can do to make things better.
This has been a tough one, but it's been really important to talk about. We've heard a shocking story, we've seen how the facts can get muddled, and we've had to face some really tough questions. But at the end of the day, This story needs to push us to do better, to be better, and to create a world where these kinds of things don't happen anymore. So until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep talking about these issues.